Cohen here with Wing Chun DC. This is tutorial second part of the third part of the tutorial on the Siu Nim Tau. And in this video here, I'm going to show you how to do the Siu Nim Tau with shifting. So in the last video we did the Siu Nim Tau without shifting. This is now with shifting. This is a slightly older video of me doing this, and this is filmed about a year ago. But anyway, it's you know, the same. It's pretty much the same thing as the last video in terms of the different hand movements. So anyway, here we go. I'm going to play it first, and then I will go through it with some commentary. Okay, there's some music, so I'll turn it up a bit here. Okay, so some comments on this. I'll just keep it going in the background. So yeah, basically what I'm doing in this here is there was a few extra movements that are added to this version if you compare it to the last version. Again, there are lots of different ways of doing the Siu Nim Tau, and I think there isn't one correct way of doing it. There are lots of different ways of doing it. Hawkins Chung's version was different to Yip Man's version. My instructor Jin Young's version was different to Hawkins' version, and some of the ways that I practice it's going to be different to my instructor Jin's. So again, this is very much open to interpretation. But you see, if you look at what I'm doing here, basically I am focusing on rooting. If you see the mouse coming here, so I'm shifting my weight from one side to the other. I'm going through the Fuxao, Hyunsao, back to the center, dropping it down, back down to the Fuxao. So here, but you see how I'm basically rooting on one side. My elbow is in front of my hips. They're cross on Paxao to palm strike. So again, you can just practice this. You can practice it in a number of different ways, and this is where I just really think it's useful to practice the Siu Nim Tau with rooting, because otherwise, particularly in the way that we train Wing Chun, you'll never face it. We rarely ever face forward like you do with the traditional Siu Nim Tau. So my thinking on that goes like, well, if you're not going to be standing with a base facing your opponent and you're always going to be rooting, why would you practice a form that has you facing forwards all of the time? Having said that, I do think there is some use to practicing it face down. So look, in this part of the Siu Nim Tau here, right, I'm facing straight forward here like that, because look, I believe that this part of the Siu Nim Tau here in particular is very, very good for practicing being ambidextrous, doing both two things at the same time, with the left and the right doing exactly the same thing, and having your weight distributed evenly, and having complete symmetry with your body. So for this part of the Siu Nim Tau, I don't use shifting for this. I think in Jin, my instructor does a version of it where he is shifting while you're doing these movements. I'm not. So I've retained this bit of the first form facing forward, but now I'm back to shifting again. And every time I do a movement, remember you notice whatever side I'm rooting on, you're striking or punching with that hand, which is obviously one of the most important basics of Wing Chun. Whatever side you root on, that's which side you're punching with. For the most part, anyway. That's a general rule of thumb. So in this part here, I'm really focusing on. I'll show you this bit here. If you just watch this, here we go. So every movement, I'm going to shift, right? So now I'm on the opposite side here. So this is a Gansao, right? So I'm now connected onto the other side. So this would be this contradicts the golden rule, which is whichever side you root on, you're striking with. It's important to be able to do the opposite of that. So to be able to be connected on your rooting side, and to be able to so I'm rooting on here on the left, but then I'm using my right arm. Now, but if you see my hip here is tucked under, is twisting towards this arm. So my hip's twisting towards this arm. So now this arm, my right arm, is connected to my left heel, like that. So it's important to be able to do it. Again, this is not the general rule. The general rule of thumb is to be able is to, again, whichever side you're rooting on, you're striking with. So now here back into Tansao. Again, Tansao on this. So back into Tansao, but now I've shifted onto this side. So this again, I'm shifted on the right, and I'm doing all the striking with my right. So I'm back to this is how for 90% of the time, this is when you're doing Chisao, that's what you want to be doing, or when you're punching, that's what you want to be doing. So I'm bowing the body, keeping my leg as straight as I can. Now I'm going into Bong Sao. Again, so I'm now going into Tansao here. So this is cross arm Tansao. So my Tansao here, I'm Tansaoing with the left and I'm rooting on the right. Again, look, you see my hip is pointing up this way. I'm making a conscious connection between my heel, hip, elbow here, elbow there. So the connection, so I'm still connected to the floor. So if someone was to put pressure on that hand, it would go down into that heel. And that's important when you're shifting around. When you shift in Wing Chun, look, so you see I'm never leaving my, I'll show you that just a bit one bit again, right? When you see the shift, right, I'm never leaving, both my heels are always on the ground. I've always got 3 points on the ground. So I shift very slowly. I go 1 foot at the top, here we go back, if you watch that. 1 foot shifts, the other foot shifts, there we go, now I'm in position. And it's important that you do that, so when you're transitioning from one side to the other, you are not losing connection to the floor. And into Bong Sao, look, so I go to Bong Sao here, go into Tan Sao again, cross arm. So from here, right, look, I'm connected with on the left side, left heel, right arm, hip, heel, hip, elbow. This is all shifting this way. So now I'm back to, this is the end of the form here. So in this version of it that I did, this is the one I did before, I'm doing 3 punches and then 3 double punches with shifting. Again, this is not the way that my instructor would necessarily do it, but it's the way that I'm doing it for this version. And I think you can do, there aren't any hard and fast, like I said before, there aren't any hard and fast rules. I think Yip Man's version of the Siu Nim Tau is one of the simplest versions that I've seen out there. So you can always YouTube Yip Man's Siu Nim Tau when you're doing it, if you want to do the kind of original Siu Nim Tau. There isn't any footage of Hawkins doing at least the first form, not to my knowledge. I've looked everywhere, but there's no footage of Hawkins doing the first form. There is some of Jin, my instructor, doing it again, but I feel he may have taken those videos offline. So Hawkins' version of the first form is a bit of a lost. It's not really, I don't know how many people have learnt it outside of his direct students, but anyway, that's the way that I learnt it, and obviously it's got my own unique take on it. But anyway, so that's how I practice Siu Nim Tau. So it's front facing and then shifting. You can do both. I don't, mixing them up together, doing a bit of shifting and a bit of facing again is fine, but there has to be some sort of rationale behind it, right? There has to be a kind of a concept flowing through it. So that's why I've left specific parts of this form front facing and specific parts that are not, that I'm rooting on, and I'm doing that just to not confuse myself, to make it as simple as possible. Anyway, so any questions, please leave comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I want to just stress that the Siu Nim Tau, this is my personal take on the Siu Nim Tau. I'm not claiming that this is traditional Wing Chun or direct from Yip Man or anything like that. I'm saying this is just my interpretation of it, and I believe that the Siu Nim Tau, like anything, should always be evolving, and the more variations you see of it, the more interesting it gets and the more ideas we're going to get for how to kind of continue and continue improving it. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.